The reason we were there when the first time you walked into the bookshop was because we got in there and never left.
would count the seconds until I could get on that Regionalzug from Potsdam Hauptbahnhof back to
All the way back
Seoul
to Zoo.
and get on that train and just get to the bookstore.
Really?
Yeah. And just let it all just fucking just fall away.
The bookshop not only functioned as a bookshop, but it was in fact a club. And that club for me became a refuge.
No one is either just fully bohemian or fully bourgeois. To have the kind of sober side, you have to have the crazy side. There have to be institutionalized opportunities for people to express this side. And I always felt like the bookshop kind of fulfilled that role very well.
And I say, but have you got what it takes? Baby, you're the reason that my head's in a mess. Baby, when I think of it, I wanna step out to the street on my own in a red satin nightie. I'm not one of yours. In a red satin nightie.
I came to Berlin to live in March 2008 and didn't know anybody or anything, so I'd made an arrangement through somebody I met on the internet to go see some secondhand bookshops in Kreuzberg, and this was the second one we got to. I was pretty sure the place was closed and the door was really stiff and we couldn't get in, but the person I was with insisted on giving it a good shove, and we came in. It didn't really look like the place was open, or it didn't really feel like we should have been in there. It felt like someone's living room, not really a bookshop. And it was a Saturday, so like downstairs was just covered in the debris of Friday night, like, and plates of butter and dirty wine glasses and all that kind of thing. And just as I was going out the door, Alan came up to me and was all like, "Do you know how this works?" And I was like thinking, like, wow, what works the door?
No, but the thing is that a lot of people really, they can't understand what he's saying because he does mumble. It's a kind of distinction that it shows that you
Alan looked like Rasputin.
Alan had a big beard. As a matter of fact, you'd see the beard several days before you'd see Alan.
Alan fell asleep when he was like telling my fortune, and I was sitting there for like another 15 minutes going, what the fuck, is he just like pretending to be in some sort of deep trance or something like that? And then I realized, no, he's just actually asleep. And he said, I said, oh, what did he tell you? And I was like, nothing, he's fucking asleep.
But he suddenly just dropped in the corner, and he had this massive plastic wine gobbler. I think he was to go around with it all night and sucking all this wine. And all of a sudden he got back up again and off he goes again like this with this wine, never spilled a drop.
Yeah, maybe that means basically what you have to understand is that how did the shop get started? Basically, Alan had a big collection of books, mostly science fiction. And when he moved to Berlin, he couldn't squeeze it into his then girlfriend's apartment.
And I don't remember actually how it all came about, but at some point of time, it was just the idea in the air, why not do a bookshop? So Alan just one day at noontime left the house and said, okay, now I'm going to find the premises. And came back later on that day and said, I found Riemannstraße 7, sorry.
They had a nice big chaise longue next to the door. And the place was full of people, and you thought, Bohemian Berlin, it does exist.
The Da Vinci Code, it just came out. And a couple friends in LA were like, this is such a horrible book, but it's such a good story with really bad writing. You're going to love it. So I came in here, and Alan hadn't heard of it, but he was like, we'll see. Now there's like, we have boxes and boxes of them.
It had a kind of club-like atmosphere. Alan looking like some wizard, you know, with this big Grateful Dead beard. And there was a black American poet called Darius. Very, very nice, very crazy chap. Motherfuck you was one of his favorite phrases.
One of the problems of living outside of one's native culture is alienation. You know, regardless of how well one might speak the language of the host country, you're not part of that culture. I discovered that the bookshop not only functioned as a bookshop, but it was in fact a club. That club for me became a refuge.
First person I saw inside was Tom, and he pretended for a while that he owned the place.
Tom taught me how to play backgammon. He was in the back playing backgammon with somebody, I can't remember who it was. So I'm just kind of stood there watching, and Tom says, "Would you mind fucking off?" He says, "You're affecting my luck."
Hello, my name is Tom Bantock. I hereby subscribe to Not Seeing You interview shoot. I arrived in Berlin, I was 50, I think 52, 53, with a 20-year-old girlfriend. And I said, go and check the locality out. And she came back and said, I found this fabulous bookshop. I thought this is such a great place, I've got to live here. So I rented the flat opposite Alan's on the second floor.
I spy you've been on the sly all the time behind me. Ha, 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 ha. I'm not one of yours. Ha, 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 ha. In a red satin nightie.
My relationship with it developed at first out of hunger. Didn't have much money to start with. Was told about the Friday night dinners and was invited along. And then after a couple of weeks of going there to get fed on a Friday, I realised we were supposed to contribute, which was like medieval type food, you know, one of these dishes with a bird inside a bird inside a bird covered in fruit.
It was just a scientific experiment. It was, maybe it had been at some time a ham, but it was...
No, there was never a ham there. It was always a goose stuffed with the turkey, stuffed with the chicken.
But at that point in the process of the biological process, it was an indeterminate object.
I don't like certain types of food and I like certain types of food. I'm very free with expressing my opinion about that, you know, and then people really started thinking that the reason one doesn't have aubergines or cucumbers served is really because of me. And I just found it absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely because I mean,
it's true. That's why there used to be a huge bowl of mushrooms in the
I
middle
love
of the table
mushrooms.
and bugger all else.
Yeah, but the thing
you
is,
were
like,
a
I
fave at
would.
the time, so the mushrooms came out.
But once the thought was put into my head that the reason there are so many mushrooms is because of me, so of course the moment the mushrooms disappeared, I couldn't help taking it personally.
He didn't like everybody who was there. Everybody who went there, there was somebody else didn't like, or, you know, which is kind of like a family.
You would agree that you disagree, and it was just a discussion, and you still respect the other people and the other person because you try to understand where they would come from.
I wouldn't necessarily say that you always came out respecting the other person.
Anyone could come, right? Drug addicts, drunkards, stupid people, clever people, ugly people. You know, Alan was very... You tell me the word.
Hausverbot. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's the only German word anybody used in there.
Yeah.
Oh, he's Hausverbot.
It's got Hausverbot, yeah.
So I think we should list some of the people who were thrown out of the bookshop. There was... Tom was permanently bald.
I know he got Hausverbot for a long time, and I can't remember why he got barred. I don't know what the actual reason.
I hated him.
I think it was Sherry eventually.
I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, there was Sherry the whole way through. You know, it's
Alan
like
was
that was the one
teaching in the
constant.
back room and all this.
I taught in the bookshop, yes, until Alan taught me out.
When there was just the older male generation there were pretty horrible sometimes, the way they would talk about some of the young women who came to the bookshop as objects, and Tom in particular.
Whoever says that, I totally disagree with that. I argue with that.
Some of these people did get on my nerves because they were really kind of dirty old men. And they were always like saying things about my legs.
So I think it's terribly unfair.
But the only person who was allowed to say things about my legs without me taking it the wrong way was, of course, Tom Bantock.
You're awfully romantic about that old bugger sometimes. I tell you, you used to get right on your threepenny bits talking about your legs all the time.
Alan actually is quite a misogynist, anti-woman person. But then a few guys like me came in and said, hang on, guys, we love women, let's cool your boots, man.
It was mostly young girls was the reason that he got Hausverbot, because he scared them. And all of a sudden there would be nights where there would only be men in the shop. I mean, look now when you come to dinner, you don't see that there's a night where there's only guys here. And then the only other Hausverbot I can remember is, why can't I even give his name?
I'm trying to remember this, and I just have like
it
zero
happened,
memory.
like 3 seconds. Then it
Yeah.
was over.
Beer versus wine. Darius had too much wine. And
Stephen Sprout
had too much beer. So this was the beer versus wine battle.
Stephen
Was thrown out because he used words, which can be very dangerous, especially in a bookshop.
It started with
Stephen
and Darius having some sort of disagreement downstairs. And then Darius decides to start needling.
Stephen.
Being a very burly Englishman, of Irish descent, by the way, he wasn't going to take shit from it.
And Darius started saying, the Irish are the niggers of Europe.
You have to realize Darius, being black and the author of Negrophobia, used the N-word every sentence. So when he said,
Stephen Sprout,
I understand that the Irish are the niggers of Britain,
Stephen
said, that's right, nigger, get me a beer.
I was pretty fragile to begin with, and someone got it into his head to call me an uppity nigger, so I had to kick him in the mouth.
Ken was here that night. The two of us ran to the door. Alan jumped into the middle of it, got his ear cut really bad, and actually had to go to the doctor maybe the next day because he had lost so much blood.
Darius James, the author, who should, you'd think, be accustomed to the use of words and just counter them with other words.
You know, I was a bad guy because I was being violent. I mean, I don't need that shit. I don't. And I'm not going to tolerate it. You know, I mean, I felt bad about it later. Because, I mean, it's just this drunk, ignorant guy who had the gall to say that to me.
But, you know, even whatever he said, I mean, there's no reason to kick him in the face over a word. But everyone in the bookshop seemed to think that was a reason.
Darius was productive and contributed a lot of things to the bookshop and to the community here. Where
Stephen
came and basically got shit-faced drunk and annoyed people. And Darius did not get Hausverbot, but
Stephen Sprout
did.
But fights in there are quite rare, I have to say. It's not something you expect.
It's strange to say fights in there are quite rare. We're not talking about a saloon in which you would have to point out, yeah, but fights in there are quite rare. There are not supposed to be any fights there at all. The fact that somebody, you know, almost lost an ear and somebody almost got knifed and somebody, you know, I mean, it's not supposed to, you know.
In 7 years, that's not bad.
We don't know that's the only thing that happened.
It was worse than that in our house when I was growing up.
It's been about a month ago. And somebody came in and said, oh, it's a bunch of bookstore people. Where's that English tripper, that Alan dude? Where's he at?
No, I miss Alan. I do. I miss Alan. We used to have.
Not so sure he was happy though.
No. Wouldn't know.
All sorts of people come through the door over the last 4 years asking that exact same question, and I'm still a bit at a loss. And there are still parts there. It's just that everything's gone through some kind of change. There's nothing untouched by that.
Only maybe one or two people of his closer friends were privy to the medical details or whatever, and then he suddenly kind of told everybody, look, this is what's happening, and from then on, started wearing women's clothes, and then shortly after wanted to be called Sophie and all that kind of stuff.
The reason that Alan is Sophie is because he couldn't get the birds. So he became a woman so he could talk to the birds about putting on makeup.
Oh, I see. You want to try and look like a woman. You want to try and live that way. That, for me, is not accepting.
He changed his name. So that's his name now. I have no problem. Alan, as far as I'm concerned, the old Alan is definitely not in existence anymore. I mean...
Fuck that. She wants to say she has a vagina or is a woman, yeah, why not? And looks like tits to me. I mean, what do I know? I don't want to touch them, but looks like tits, okay?
I thought of myself like Alex in Clockwork Orange. It was like guys were trying to talk to me as they had done.
She'd ask me about shoes, and I said, ask John. Ask John.
John. He talks more about shoes than I do.
Yeah, because, in our band, John is the one who's more concerned with, which hat one is allowed to wear with which jacket, yeah? Just ask him. Why are you asking me? You're asking me because I'm a woman? What about the time we used to talk? We used to talk about Victorian literature.
To me, the person is very much the same, because when I talk to a man or a woman, I'm only listening to the words. And the thing about Alan/Sophie is, whether it was Alan or Sophie, she is saying something that I haven't actually heard before.
There really were people who used and abused Alan's generosity in terms of that honor system of just keeping a tab of what you've consumed. It's not possible to do it yourself when you're drinking. It's just not, no matter how honest you might want to be.
Gallons. I drank gallons and gallons and gallons of red wine there. There's probably about 350 bottles of red wine that I never actually paid for. Didn't Kim set up the whole pay at the desk, take your plate, and take your glass of wine downstairs? I always get the feeling that was maybe a Kim invention.
Well, that's kind of part of how it works, you see. All the unpleasant things, Sophie gives the impression that Kim does.
Bob Doffa.
That's how they work. That's how they work.
I think a lot of it has to do, too, with this Kim being so...
Let's trash Kim.
So militaristic about... You have to come in and you have to pay for your drinks every time.
I think Sophie probably doesn't make a lot of money on all the work she does on Friday to make a meal. And she does it pretty much out of love and wanting to throw a dinner party. But I wouldn't say it was my idea. I would say Sophie said to me, I'm making, the beer's going out, and what I'm paying for beer is less than I'm taking in. And then, I became the bad cop that says, yo, did you pay for that beer yet? And, until people got used to, I have to pay for things here.
Before it was, we'd play music and we'd do whatever. And then it became only what Kim wanted to hear. If you didn't like what Kim wanted to hear, then you could fuck off. And now it's no music at all.
And to be able to sit up in this one room and have a conversation without having to scream over people's heads. And we also, for a while, were having the neighbors upstairs just above us call and say things are too loud.
Nathan would bang on the table or whatever with the spoons, and we'd make, just a good time and have a nice evening.
It's less that the bookshop has changed, or it's Berlin that has changed so much in so little time. And the big thing was, of course, the Football World Cup in 2006, when Berlin was on the news for 6 weeks everywhere in the world. And they all had the same image, sitting on a beer bench, blah, 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 techno party until the morning. Berlin started to become this like mecca of like expat places.
If it stayed the same, it would be dreadful. Nothing should stay the same. It's had some good things that have changed, and it's had some bad things that's changed. But you know what? Probably out of those bad things have come good things.
Walk in that place, and you're in another country, and then you go back into real life.
I walked in there a few weeks ago, and it was like, yes, it does all come back to you. And it's like that all, like, I found myself automatically becoming louder and becoming more theatrical. And that's just through standing in that place for,
Have you heard about the rat
15
situation
minutes?
yet?
There are things in my life apart from the bookshop. A few.
So even if I'm willing to say that I think Alan or Sophie's a wanker, and even if he is willing to hate me, that doesn't matter. He has created a wonderful place.
We don't go there as often. Like, it was a kind of home from home. And you still feel that when you go there, but I suppose we just decided to grow up and leave home.